We're just instruments in your hands.
Amen.
That's all we are. And I'm reminded throughout history and throughout His Word, you choose the imperfect instrument, man or woman, to do a work.
Amen.
Great Commission.
Amen.
And it is my prayer today, when we examine this topic, not just from the New Testament, but particularly from the Old Testament, we are called to do this work. And it's easy for us when we're in the world, to get caught up in the world, to forget why we're here. To realize where we have a command and directive from you, Jesus, where you left. In the Matthew, you talk to the disciples. Here's the word of God to it. May you guide us through your Spirit, we ask in Jesus' name.
Amen.
Right, admittedly, we were going to Bible study class. I was scratching my brain to switch topics. Should I do a Revelation series? Because that comes to mind a lot. I'm talking to my father-in-law who's in the back there about that topic a lot, actually. And in particular, the guy who was doing the lesson. My other topic, I was actually Sabbath sermon. I can switch it to that instead, but I have to stick to my guns. I want to reread Matthew 28 really quick. We're not going to focus particularly on that text, but it's the idea of what Christ is telling us here. The Great Commission is not something that's just central to what Christ said in that moment. It is a repetition we see throughout the Bible of God choosing an individual or a group of individuals to go take a message to the people, the world. And in Matthew 28, starting with, I'll start with 16, just to get more of a context here. When the 11 disciples, starting at verse 16, went away into Galilee to the mountain which Jesus had appointed for them. When they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. And Jesus came and spoke to them, saying, all authority. Some translations translate that power. All authority and power is given unto who? Who?
Jesus.
Me. Follow along with me, please. In where? In heaven and where else?
Earth.
Earth. Go therefore and baptize. What's the first word?
Go.
Make disciples. That's the first point. Make disciples of all nations. Then what? Baptize in the name of the Son of the Father, in the Father, of the Son, of the Holy Spirit. Doing next what? To teach them to observe all things that I commanded you, and lo, I am with you always, even unto the end of the age. Some say end of the world in different translations. This is New King James. You examine that there are two main promises there that I hold to. Especially as a future pastor, down in the Word of Common Conference. It's not my work that I'm doing. It's not my ministry. It's God's work. It's His ministry. His. And we can't forget that because it's easy to get the human element in there and glorify the human element. It cannot be. The other point is that it says, I am with you always. And these two basic points in Christendom, as the Adventist Church, are easily forgotten. Easily forgotten. That's why it's so important to pick off out of the Word of God the promises that He's given us. Every single thing. Refresh that relationship, reignite that passion that you and I need to go forward. But I want to go to Exodus chapter 4. And that's what we're going to look at. And it's the story of Moses, part of Moses. You're familiar with the story of Moses early on. He fled, after killing an Egyptian. In chapter 3, just prior to that, he had shepherded the flocks of Jethro, his father-in-law, being a sheep herder for so many years now. So he was educated as an Egyptian in the royal courts of Egypt. You've got to re-educate. And the trend, it seems, in the Bible that God uses something simple as sheep herding to educate the brain. Very simple. Here's a stick. Here's your rope. Here's some sheep. Now go. And that's the commission. And he's commissioning us to this work. But I love what Moses does here. In chapter 3, Moses comes to the burning bush. Now imagine putting yourself in his shoes, and he sees up in the mountains there, all of a sudden, a light in a burning bush. And he marvels at it. And Moses goes up to it and says, I'm going to turn now inside and go see this cool thing. Using some 21st century lingo here. It's cool. And all of a sudden it starts to talk to him. This is where it plays in chapter 4, starting with verse 1. Moses comes to this, and the Lord says, I have seen thee share the affliction of my people in chapter 3, and I have come down to deliver them out of the hands of Egypt. And so God starts to commission Moses, and what does Moses start doing? Chapter 4. Listen. Verse 1, then Moses answered and said, but suppose they will not believe me, nor listen to me, to my voice. Suppose they say the Lord has not appeared to you. We read the Spirit of Prophecy, you read the Patriarchs and Prophets. Moses doesn't do this out of doubt original. It was out of timidity and his lack of self-distrust, which is a good thing. We want that. But God doesn't choose a person by mistake. You. I don't make mistakes. Go. You go. So Moses comes up with this fear, this humility. So the Lord, instead of just turning him aside, because we serve a gracious God, folks, he says this. The Lord said, what is in your hand? And he said, a rod. Now, a rod in the Bible, in history, particularly as a shepherd, but also represents power. Rod is a representation of power. And so God tells him, well, take that rod. He said, cast it on the ground. And so he cast it on the ground, and it became a what? This is very prominent in Egypt. The serpent was on the crest of the Pharaoh a lot of times. And in this instance, this is the one assurance, I'm going to give you power. Now, try to put yourself in his shoes for a moment. Christ has just given his 12 disciples a commission. The commission applies to you and I. He tells us all his authority and power is given unto him. We have Christ with us. We have the Spirit continually. I am with you always, even to the end of the world. And here we have a small microcosm for one man, Moses, who is starting to get this assurance of power and authority. Not just in words, but in literal miracles that are happening before his eyes, one-on-one with God. You have to ask yourself a question. In your audience chamber with God, whether it's your devotional or in your life, have you seen God work miracles in your life?
Amen.
Now, they're not staffs turning to snakes all the time. It doesn't mean you have to do that. But God may work in your life, whether it's money, food, clothes, or whatever. You're blessed and you're empowered to live in the dead, to do work that needs to be done. Use my own life as an example. I didn't pay for any of my cars. It's a blessing. Do the work. I was given all my clothes for a good price. Do the work. It's all given to us to do the work. And that's just the material stuff. God's trying to make a point here. It's supernatural. It's not your power, it's my power. Continues. And the Lord said to Moses, reach out your hand and take it by the tail. Now, no person in their sane right mind would pick up a copperhead by the tail. You wouldn't do that. Tennessee and Georgia have copperheads. I haven't seen one yet, though, in the woods. I haven't yet, I'm still waiting. Most people wouldn't wish for that. Or a cottonmouth for that matter. When I'm on campus, I hear people, someone got bit by a snake the first year. Where? I haven't seen it, but I know we got him here. But when you pick up a snake, you know it's picking it by its tail. It's going to do what? Come back to you. Usually a snake charmer will take a big long stick, and it's got a curve at the end, and smash the head down. Then grab that head. An interesting statement, though, made by a commentator was this. The promise in Genesis 3:15, it will crush the serpent's head and it will bruise his heel, means that Moses doesn't have the power to touch the serpent's head. It's God's power. You don't have that authority, Moses. Now touch it by faith by the tail and pick it up. Now turn back to the rock. Faith. You have to believe I'm going to do this for you. You turn into a snake, then you pick it up again. It's not blind. And what I love about the story is God is showing him visually. Boom, boom. I mean, all of this stuff. And then we read on, you read later on in the 10 plagues of Egypt, the grand scale. What it must have been for him, Moses, to have done all of this by the power of God. Stop and think for a second. What can God do now if we're totally surrendered to him? The promise in Joel chapter 2 says that young men will see visions, old men will read dreams again. These people will be surrendered to the Lord to do the work, commissioned to go forward. And so he keeps going. Listen to this. And he reached out his hand and he caught it, and boom, became a rod again. And I would have done it over and over again just to make sure. Rod. That they may do what? That they may believe that the Lord God of their fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has appeared to you. Notice he gives you the threefold name, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. So you get it. They'll believe you because I've given you the three names of the patriarchs prior. Keep going. Keep going. Verse 6, furthermore, the Lord said to him, now put forth your hand to listen. I'm still pondering this part. Think about it. Let me chew and ruminate on this. Why his bosom? Why the chest? Here's a parallel for you, close to the heart, right? Thought, I'm not saying it's a fact. But it's interesting, later on when Miriam and Aaron complained against him, who turned white as snow? Miriam did. Again, I'm not saying it's anything. It's an interesting thought. I'm still going through it. The thing that was closest to his heart at the time was his own sister and his own brother. And you put your hand in your bosom in your shirt, for me, because I'm talking because I go there a lot to get my phone. And you pull it up, and it's white as snow and leprosy, but in the original Hebrew, it's not leprosy, but a different disease. So you've got a snake. There's your first power, Moses. And what do you want? He keeps going. Put your hand in your pocket, put your hand in your bosom, whatever. Pull it out, it turns white as snow. He's empowering him. He's assuring him step by step so that there is no more room for what? It would be doubt. Verse 7. He said, put your hand in your bosom again. So he put his hand in his bosom again, and drew it out of his bosom, and behold, he was restored like the other one. Then it will be, if they do not believe you, nor heed the message of the first sign, right, that they may believe the message of the latter sign, 2. And it should be, if they do not believe even these 2. I want that type of assurance, folks. And I'm given to it right here. Christ has already told me I'm going to be with you wherever you go. And the power and authority is mine. We often think, probably like Moses here, I'm going to go now and wipe the curtain on this point. We're the ones going to do it. No. The only point of the work we're doing is go. What does the Lord say? So is we. Not my own ideas, not my own personal opinion. The Word. This is what the Lord is telling Moses to do. Shall be if they do not believe even these two signs or listen to your voice, to your voice. You shall take the water from the river and pour it on the dry land. The water which you take from the river will become what?
Blood.
Blood. Interesting. Look at all these things. Leprosy was not a well-known thing in Egypt. The Nile was considered a god in Egypt. And the same thing in Hinduism too, over in India. The Ganges is considered a god. It's a fantastic idea. It's the same idea. But they worshipped the idol because it was a life giver. It gave all sorts of life up and down Egypt. It took, once again, one of the plagues. The first one is he pours water and comes in the blood. He kills everything. So over and over again, promise 1, promise 2, promise 3. How many more miracles can I show you in your life? You'll finally get to work. Are you following me? Ask yourself that question. And I have to ask myself that question seriously. How much more do I need to prove to you that I have shown you the truth? Is it precious to you? I have commissioned you to go. You don't have to be a pastor. You don't have to be an evangelist. You have to work anywhere else. It doesn't matter who you are. God has promised to give you the power to live that life that's consistent commission. We don't really have any excuse. We don't. If we know the truth. We don't. So, then Moses said in verse 10, listen, I love this point. Oh my Lord, I am not eloquent. I can't speak very good. Listen. Neither before nor since you have spoken to your servant, but I am slow of speech and slow of tongue. Not me. No. Hold on now. Wait a minute. I love this story. It's a conversation. It reminds me when I have worship with the Lord. It's a conversation with God when you have worship with the Lord. It's supposed to be like that. And then we keep going. So the Lord said to him, what does he say? Who has made man's mouth? Or who makes the mute, the deaf, the seeing, or the blind? Have not I? Where are you at, bro? What don't you get yet? Now, therefore, what does he say? What's the word? Go. Title of the sermon. What did Jesus say in the Great Commission? Go. Go. Not done. And I love after go, he says, and I will what? Be with your mouth and teach you what you shall say. Not an ounce, not a bit, a drop of what God has asked Moses to do is Moses to do anything himself. Go. Go. What have I told you to say? Then our people go. Not am I going to you, but we're going to be leaving out. Go. And I'm willing to bet, put myself in this spot. I'm willing to bet we make more excuses. Guilty. Guilty. We're afraid of the consequences. We are. Brother, sister, so-and-so, they might not like me anymore. They might not like what I say. It's not me. But the book is saying, go. We may have honest things like fears and doubts about our own abilities. This is true. Moses has been away from Egypt for quite a while, 40 years. Tending sheepies? Sheep were dumb. But he was taking a break. He'd been in royalty for years. I'll take a break. Tending sheep is not my idea of a break. But you're in that position. I'm not going to go back there. I just killed a guy there some years ago. You don't want to deal with that situation. Again, that's a life situation. Imagine the scenario. I worked at New Balance for a year. New Balance? No, I used a different one. Lynch Landscaping, back in 2015, 3 years ago, 4 years ago. And it was a good position I had. The pay was okay. But there were lessons I had learned myself in this situation. I had been given a leadership position as a crew leader in landscaping services. I can do pavers, I can do walkways, I can do what's but I realized my temper was not in the right place. And being in that one job for only 3 months showed me that I had an issue there. Lost my job there. Now imagine if God called me back. Jason, I need you to go back to landscaping at Lynch. Yes, you need to go. I'm going to empower you to go preach at Lynch Landscaping. Really? I have an issue back there, Lord. Moses in Egypt. You follow me? The parallel here? I really don't want to. I just told you. Your shovel is going to turn into a snake. Your bucket will turn into a sword. I don't know. I'm just giving an expression here. God has already promised to be with us. See, we need to look beyond the visible to the invisible.
Amen.
There is power beyond what we can't see. And there have been times where I thought about actually going back and saying, I'm sorry. Although I was right about my situation and certain things, the attitude was still wrong. And I had to ask for the forgiveness. Wasn't cool. It's not good. Verse 13, he said, Oh, my Lord, again, please send by the hand of whomever else you may send. Not me. So the anger of the Lord was kindled against Moses. Now, this is not some anger going to strike you down with lightning. Zap. It doesn't do that. But I do sometimes imagine who gets a little upset. We don't think that God does it, but he does. And I get to use my own life. I regret I have to repent, Lord, I've wasted so much time on things that are irrelevant. When there is a great work to do. And Moses was not bidden to hold it himself, to keep it in himself. Hey, Aaron, come over here, let me share it with you. Yeah, go get your brother to know it, and your sister. It's not just for the small group, it's for the world. And in that little microcosm of Egypt, you have the whole plan of salvation. Moses, a representative of Christ, goes in to preach a message to a world that is in darkness. Israel had been there for 400 years in darkness. It lost complete sight of what God was. The Sabbath was obliterated. Being spirit of prophecy. Young. We're to do the same thing. Remember, darkness covers the earth and gross darkness to the people, as the book of Isaiah teaches. It's here. And we're commissioned to dispel that light through part of ourselves. That's part of your commission. And in doing that, discipling people to know Christ. I want to know Christ like Moses knew Christ. Like the Bible says, the man who talks to God face to face. Amazing. And Jesus, Lord, said, Is not Aaron the Levite your brother? I know that he can speak well. And look, he is also coming out to meet you, and when he sees you, he will be glad in his heart. Notice the Lord doesn't kick him off or leave him alone. What was the method? You didn't go by yourself in the New Testament. Jesus said 2 by 2. Notice he sends Aaron. Amazing. It's already being set up. Way before Christ ever set foot on earth in physical flesh, he had a great commission. Back in Exodus chapter 4. Yeah. I'm sure it was given to Adam and Eve, their progeny, the people who are not believing in God, even though Adam was there for nearly 1,000 years. Preach it, Adam, go. They still need to remember and know. Yes. Verse 15. Then you shall speak to him and put the words in his mouth. And I will be your mouth, and with his mouth, and I will teach you what you shall do. So he shall be your spokesperson to the people, and he himself shall be as a mouth for you, and you shall be to him as God. Interesting. Imagine this shepherd, it is true. How the king of Egypt, the Pharaoh, must have thought when he saw Moses coming back in out of the royal robes, the shepherd, of course, me. Really? You're going to come to me in robes? It reminds me of Christ. Here you had Moses, who was the prince of Egypt for years. Kills someone, leaves, becomes a shepherd man. Rich, poor, right? You follow me? Rich, poor. Here you have the Son of God, who was rich in heaven, became poor for you and me to do the work. Wow. New parallel. It's amazing. It's all wrapped up in there. Let me read a quote from Ellen White, who talks about this situation. By the way, I've always shared it with you here, but I have to share it again. I still believe in the spirit of prophecy.
Amen.
I don't like to play it down because if the prophet, like Moses, has something to say, I need to listen. Right? Listen to what she says here. You can read this in Prophets and Kings, in Patriarchs and Prophets. She said, but the servant of God was still overwhelmed by the thought of the strange and wonderful work before him. I can imagine. You look at the world around us, how many more people are being born day by day? The work is almost over. Excuse me. In his distress and fear, he now pleaded as an excuse a lack of ready for speech. He says again, "Oh my Lord, I am not eloquent, neither heretofore, nor since that you have spoken unto your servant, but I am slow of speech and slow of tongue." He had been so long with the Egyptians that he had not so clear knowledge and ready use of their language as when he was among them. That was on it. Come on. But the Lord said, "Who has made man's mouth? Who makes the deaf, the dumb, the seeing, or the blind? Have not I the Lord?" To this was added another assurance of divine aid. Now therefore go, and I will be with thy mouth and teach you what you will say. But Moses still entreated that a more competent person be selected. These excuses, right, at first proceeded from humility and diffidence. Honest. If someone asked me to do a job straight up the first time in my life, I'm a little shaky about it. Never done it before. Been a while. True. But, I love the word but. Listen to this. After the Lord had promised to remove all difficulties. Gone. Did you get that? Was it too low to read again? After the Lord had promised to remove all difficulties, and give him final success. You can't give me better assurance than that, folks.
Amen.
We've already got it. It's right in front of us. Remember Mark, I think it's chapter 11, the boy who was demon possessed. Remember? The poor father wanted his boy to be free from the demon. The disciples couldn't cast him out. And they're questioning the disciples, and Jesus says, "Why are you questioning him?" "Ah, my son keeps getting cast and thrown into the water all the time, and the disciples couldn't cast him out." What do they say? "Oh, faithless and perverse generation, how long shall I be with you? How long shall I suffer you? What? Bring the boy to me." Faith, we talked about that in the Sabbath school class, is paramount. It's not a feeling. When God says what he says, he means what he says you can do through him. He that has begun a good work in you will what? Finish it. He that has called you in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, no, verse chapter 5, will also do it. Not me. Him. I only submit and go, Lord, where we go. Listen. And then any further shrinking back and complaining of his unfitness showed distrust of God and implied a fear that God was unable to qualify him for the great work to which it called him. Do you understand all that? Why doesn't anyone say it? or that he had made a mistake in the selection of the man. I want to read again. It implied a fear that God was unable to qualify him for the great work for which he called. We are all called for a great work. We are. I'll go back. Matthew chapter 28. And Jesus said, not only to his disciples, but to you and I down to the age. And I can imagine how much the forward must have attached their heart to this promise. All authority, in verse 18 of Matthew 28, is given to me in heaven and earth. Take that home, folks, to your heart. When you wake up in the morning and you're alive, and you look out your window, I do this sometimes, look at the sunrise. The God who threw a ball of fire in his face can give me the power to do the work that he's asking me to do. Forgive me, Christ, for complaining, for doubting, because I know that you can do it.
Amen.
We have a commission. And he's promised to be with us everywhere we go. Do you want that?
Amen.
I want it. I think about all the work I'm doing right now in ministerial programs. Church ministry to Christian theater to, you can only take so much program. The word of your counsel. God's word. Go back to the book. Claim its promises there for you. They're not for saints. They're for sinners. Moses was not a saint. Moses had his own problems too. Abraham had his problems. Isaac had his problems. Jacob had the problems. He had his problems. Nothing's bad said about Daniel. I'm sure he had his issues too. Somewhere. Talk about that. But they still believe. Like it says that Abraham was counted in him for righteousness. He moved forward. In spite of not even seeing his own home. Imagine being put at a home and here, go somewhere else. You leave your money, your family, your friends. You go somewhere where someone is at you don't even know. Moses didn't know God that well. Just met him. Go. Yes, go. I just showed you. I just empowered you. I've turned the pews into marshmallows. I don't know. What will it take you to believe is the question God asks. What will it take? And I know we need to sit down every day and think about what God has done in our lives. Because I know if we sit down and think, we can see.
Amen.
I can see. God forgive me for that. I know Jesus is there. He's there in power. God is working with his own. Look, the miracle of making a staff into a snake is easy. Recreating a man in the own image of Christ, that's hard work for God. Amen. That's choice. And Moses was happy to work. You would represent me. You want to go?
Amen.
You all look ready to go. Send me. Be excited. Be on fire. Realize it's for you. No, I don't mean you have to go to India or Egypt. It's not what the Lord is asking. It's where you are. That's the Great Commission. Could be Walmart. Could be Walgreens. Home. By the way, good point. I think Sharon just pointed that out. It was a whisper. Simon. Home. It starts at home first.
That's right.
Yes. Let's get ready, folks. He's promised to be with us. He's promised to empower us. It's not us. Let's bow our heads. Father, I thank you for giving us the promises of the Lord. That where two or three are gathered together, there I am amongst them. That I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Lord, you promised to give me a new heart. You promised to give any of us a new mind. You promised to increase our faith. You promised to fill us with your spirit if we ask this of you. You promised to be with us wherever we go, Jesus. We know that all things will be given to the goodness of Moshe and Christ.
Amen.
Think of Moses, Lord, the commission he was given, you commission all of us. To go us in that beginning, to call. To make disciples wherever we are. And may we do this day by day, having in mind your work, Lord. First and paramount in our lives. Because in Jesus' name I ask and pray. One of my favorite songs, the 618 in the hymn.